On this episode of RŌL Radio, we have 4th Yodan and USA Judo coach Jim McGovern. Whether in the U.S. Army, spending over 2 decades on the Chicago Police Force, or now working as a safety consultant, the one constant for Jim was his love of martial arts, especially judo. Listen as Jim discusses his love of judo, its rich history, and why he believes it is such an important sport. Jim's journey has also included some huge setbacks. Setbacks that would have made most people quit the sport they love, but not Jim. On this episode, he shares his story of overcoming devastating injuries and how he motivated himself to not let them stand in the way of returning to the sport he loved so much. And stick around after the episode for some hilarious outtakes with Thomas, Gary, and Jim. Here's RŌL Radio with the one and only Jim McGovern.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we're live.
And we live.
Yes, we are.
You guys might want to get me in on this podcast. Somebody went over Gary like his neighbor, runs him over in his driveway, goes out of his way. Maybe that could be a good stand-in.
Maybe this is an audition, and
yeah, right.
I'll be looking for a new gig in a couple episodes.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah, for most of you guys who are just joining us then right now, we've been laughing for probably like 10-15 minutes right now, and we decided finally to press the record button and start this show.
This could go off the rails at any moment. So
this is going to be a dangerous episode. Jim, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
So what's interesting behind this week or this episode is that about 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I officially started a journey of judo. And after being on the mat for nearly 20 years in jiu-jitsu, thanks to this young and handsome gentleman, I had the opportunity of exploring official and formal judo. And here we are 2 years later.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you for being here.
Sure.
Why judo? Why judo for you? How did it all start?
I started years ago when I was a kid. I started in 1980. So altogether, it's been like 40 years for me through injuries and everything else. But what I really wanted was back in those days in the mid-'70s, karate was so big. JKD, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris was one of my heroes, and I actually did meet him. I posted on our Facebook page a picture of me and Chuck together, and actually got to train with a couple guys there that were in town for an event. Bill Wallace, whose nickname was Superfoot.
Was that Dan Inson? I can't even say his name.
I trained with him too, but that was a separate thing. This was another event that Chuck was in town for, maybe mid-'90s. I trained with Dan Insano back like in the early 90s.
Cool.
So I always, sought out to do my training with the best I had available to me. Unfortunately, we live in Chicago, and there's a lot of people coming in, seminars, stuff like that. But, even through today, there's not a lot of great judo happening on the South Side. And that was true when I was a kid. And in the early 70s, mid-'70s, I really wanted to do karate, So in 1980, long story, I started my journey in karate, and actually ended up doing kickboxing, some competitions. I boxed while I was in the Army back in the mid-'80s. Then I got out and I got really serious. I felt like I wanted to finish up what I had started, and I did Thai boxing before it was really popular. I did a lot more just rough street kickboxing, working out in a friend of mine's garage. It had a karate studio at one time. It closed down, so he just wanted to work out, and he shut the door on a hot day like today, and we just would fight, spar, and have fun, and I just loved it. But after a while, I started feeling like I was getting kind of beat up a little bit, and I really wanted to compete. I've always had this long Olympic interest. My mother and I used to watch the Olympics all the time, going back to like a Miracle on Ice in 1980. I watched it live with my mom. I was in Lake Placid, New York. But, back in those days when you only had the basic channels, it really became like a passion of mine. And then, of course, we boycotted later that year for the Summer Olympics. But ever since then, I just really had this Olympic dream and pull, and it kind of drew me toward a sport that I felt like I could start maybe working toward that path. And I ended up in judo in the mid-90s. And it was a good fit for me. I think all my life I looked for a sport where I was a good fit. I did football, I did all that, but it never really worked out.
What made it different? Or what made it different what was the difference for you between judo and taekwondo or karate, whatever the other martial arts you were doing? What drew you to it so much that you continued doing it and kind of the other things dropped off?
Yeah, I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast where he talked about, he was a competitive taekwondo competitor, very good. And he said something that really resonated with me. Once he saw jiu-jitsu, or in my case, I saw judo. Once I saw it, it made perfect sense. Like, he dropped what he was doing, literally walked up to the taekwondo mat, never looked back, and went to jiu-jitsu to start all over. But that was similar for me too. But I saw judo, and I was just done with everything else, every other striking art, every other thing. And I always knew in my mind that there was no answer for that question. What if a fight goes to the ground? And that was heavily dismissed in the karate circles. Fights never go to the ground. They would have that attitude. Maybe they didn't say those words, but that attitude was so obvious and so present that once I saw that judo in such a beautiful art, and it played into my strengths, which was at that time I was really working out pretty heavy. I was very strong, probably a lot stronger than people my age, size, and I knew I could use my strength and my ability. And that really proved true, because most of the people I fought at that time were heavier than me. So, the typical guy in the heavyweight age group is, the age group is, the weight class is 220 and above. But most people in that weight class are like, say, 5'9", 5'10", 310, 320, and they're just like built like fire hydrants.
Right.
And you got to, unfortunately, I say it all the time, technique over strength. But when you're with these big boys, from France or Russia, places where judo is very well established, you really have to bring every tool you got.
Yeah. For people who don't know, how tall are you?
6'3".
6'3"?
Yeah, but back in those days, I competed at maybe 240 and tried to gain weight. I never really gained weight until I was always working out maybe 10 times a week. Usually was my average between weightlifting, running, working out. Of course, judo. Sometimes they do double. But my metabolism slowed down after I got hurt, and that was 10 years ago. And after that, I had no problem gaining weight. Back in those days, so when I was competing, I could not even, I could eat everything in sight and not get to 250. And I wanted to gain weight.
That's like Gary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't get to 250 either. I can get close. I'm pretty close, but I'm not quite there.
And right now I'm trying to reverse that process. I've taken on this new attitude toward fitness, and in spite of all the injuries that I have, I'm really trying to work backwards. I think, I heard somebody say, I listen to all these motivational things on YouTube. And the one thing is, if nothing changes, then nothing will change. So I'm getting up now like 6 o'clock in the morning, forcing myself to go to the gym, forcing myself to get on the elliptical. And that's really been my best tool, is to get on the elliptical. When the gyms were closed down for COVID, it really affected me because my knee is so bad. I can't just go for a walk or a run or a jog. I have to have the elliptical or the bike, a stationary deal. And, it really, really hurt me when the gyms were down. So,
yeah. Well, I don't want to pay you a compliment, but when you got up momentarily and walked away from the computer, and I actually set the time. I said, I think he looks like he's losing some weight. So
yeah,
congratulations.
a couple pounds. Thanks. It comes off kind of hard. And this whole week I worked out so hard. I decided I was going to start a blog, but waking up at 6 a.m, by the time I was ready to start a blog in the afternoon after working, I was too tired. So. And then my eating has been kind of up and down this week as I try to focus in. Maintaining and getting used to being sore again. Yeah. And my lower back is just killing me.
Well, I think there's no question that this current situation really messes with everybody, and new patterns, or the patterns that we want to have, that we desire, are not always available, or they're not as easy to accomplish. The goals are not as easy to achieve, and it's mostly not because we don't want to, it's because the circumstances we find ourselves in, just like you mentioned, even getting to the gym. Right. As now it's possible, but it's not as easy as it used to be. It's not as open. It's not as convenient. One of the things that you mentioned on the very beginning, right off the bat, is that the appealing part behind judo was the competition factor. You always wanted to be in there. You competed. How often did you compete? What was that like way back 20 years ago?
I tried to always compete in the bigger events. I figured there was more bang for my buck there. And it didn't really necessarily matter if you were qualified. You could go to a judo competition and enter yourself and maybe do poorly, but you're still there to benefit the others, and they still, try to make it a good bracket, And I always felt like some of the local competition I might have one competitor, or two competitors. And that's all well and good, but even in the case of some of our students who compete, I encourage them to go to the bigger competitions. They're going to get more out of it. Maybe 4 or 5 matches in a day, that kind of thing, versus just 1 or 2 with the same person. So I tried to compete as often as I could, and I did, and I worked a career and all that. And I think in the back of my mind, I knew that I had the talent, but I also knew, and so did my coach back then, Erwin Cohen, who was a 72 Olympian, said to me in 2002, he said, if you want to get serious about this, your last chance would be 2004 Athens. And I said, well, what do I have to do? And it was a compliment to me that we were even having this conversation. But he said, you got to quit the police department, move up and work, by me somewhere. And because I was traveling quite a distance every day to go work with him. And he was way up in the northern suburbs. And I, of course, lived in the southwest side. And, it just occurred to me at that moment, the amount of sacrifice that these Olympic athletes put in. And, I just was not capable of doing it. And I just knew, instantly I knew. And I think I'd always known that I couldn't sacrifice that much. But had I got involved in judo earlier, back in 1980, when I started my karate journey, I think it would have been a lot more feasible. I think my journey would have been a lot different. And I think that, judo is my sport. And if you have, both you guys have young kids and all that, but I mean, it's interesting to watch kids develop. Maybe he likes baseball, maybe he doesn't. Oh, he wants to be in soccer. Oh, he wants to be in football. But where's he going to find what he really wants to do? He or she, really finds what they want to do. And I think that it took me a while to find that. I knew it was martial arts, but it wasn't judo. And that's what I wish I would have done, but I always felt like I could contribute to the sport by at least working out with these guys and giving them a good workout.
And you mentioned that sacrifice that wasn't feasible. Talk about that a little bit more. What exactly that means? I mean, because here's what I'm looking at this. 99% of people watch Olympics. Some of them watch judo. Some of them have a lot of passion for martial arts, and they see these amazing athletes. They cheer for them. Yeah. But in reality, none of us really have even a clue what it takes to get to that level, let alone even compete with others on that level.
It's a very, very difficult thing. And, you talk to pretty much you have to be financially sufficient. If you're not, you have to be sponsored and in an environment where you have access to move around the country easier, to go to competitions, to register for that, and to live. A lot of times in this country, some of our sports, by the way our federation is set up, is not conducive to that. Like I made a point after 2016, how many dollars were spent by each country. Like Brazil spent almost $20 million U.S. I'm getting their judo team ready for the Rio Olympics, which makes sense, right? A lot of European countries spend nearly that much. The United States spend $1 million.
Why?
And $1 million. I mean, it's like, what are you even doing for an individual athlete at that point?
Well, I think
but why this happens? Why other countries spend so much money for?
Well, Jim's brought
Olympics?
Jim's brought up in the past that the number one sport in the world is what? Soccer, right?
Yeah.
What's number two? And people start saying football, baseball, hockey, things like that. But go ahead, Jim. What's number two?
It's judo.
Right.
More people practice judo in the world than any other sport, except for soccer. And a lot of that is countries we never heard of, right? That's why they have a Grand Slam in Baku, Uzbekistan. They're, going all through that Middle East. And, I also published that thing on Facebook about the athlete from Iran and the controversy with the Israeli athlete. And that caused now Iran is banned from any international competition. But that all started with judo. Because he was told to drop out of a final situation where he would have to face an Israeli athlete who eventually went on to win. His name is Sagi Muki, and he ended up not fighting Sagi Muki, and Muki went on to win, but they told this Iranian athlete to drop out versus the possible fact that he could lose to him.
Right.
And then he left Iran and could never return. His family was under threat and all that, and he's really taken a huge chance. But I mean, the impact of this sport is so wide and so strong and so heavy. But they in addition to everything else, in that country, it's a political challenges as well and stressors.
Now, why do you think it hasn't caught on here as big?
Boy,
didn't catch on or faded away?
Yeah, back in the 60s, 70s, it was huge. Like my coach, Erwin Cohen, or his brother Steve, who won the Nationals 6 times, I think, and competed for years and years. Back in those days, he would talk about in some of the lighter weight categories, maybe 78 or 82 or whatever it was back then for them. Now it's a little different. Now it's 73 and 81. But, there were 250 competitors in each class. They'd have to have the finals over 2-3 days. They'd start on Friday and end on Sunday, because there's so many brackets, so many people. But why it faded out, I don't know. I don't even know if that's accurate. Some people would probably argue that. But there's a lot of people really trying to keep this sport alive. And what they talk about now is grassroots development. We're already looking at 2024, I think it's LA, if I'm not mistaken. But they want to, develop kids from our own country into this sport. And a lot of times what they were doing, they were grabbing college athletes who displayed like, I know one girl who threw the shot put out of University of Miami, and she ended up being an Olympian heavyweight. But there was no one in that category, and they liked her and thought that they could develop her into a judo athlete. So that's what you're seeing. But now they're trying to do that with kids and develop them so they can walk into that arena now with 20 years experience.
Right. Like a Travis Stevens, where he didn't, he wasn't doing anything else, right? He was just doing judo. Yeah.
And that's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah.
Huge. And until you know it, until you see it, it's hard to understand. Like even Ronda Rousey, I knew her when she was a kid, and she came out by Cohen's to practice with us, say like the early 2000s. She might have been 14, 15, 16 at that time. And she'd bounce around the country, going to different places. And her mom, having been a judo athlete, her mom was the first woman to win a world championship. But women were not allowed in the Olympics at that time, in the 80s, in judo.
In judo, yeah.
The first women's judo was in 1992 in Barcelona. Anyway, we saw Ronda as a kid, and we knew that like she was going someplace. She might have been 14 years old, and, with a backpack on, and she was ready fighting, nationals and doing very well. And we all looked at her and knew she was going somewhere and doing something big. But even after she won the bronze medal in Beijing in 2008, she came back to this country and she lived in her car on the streets of California, LA. We did nothing for her. We did, and eventually she found a great path, right? MMA and then wrestling and all this other stuff. And here you have an elite athlete who have been training for years and years with very little assistance, very little sponsorship, very little anything.
But how does this happen? I guess I don't get it.
Yeah.
You have all the other sports.
Right.
The athletes make millions. I mean, look at Olympic athletes like runners or
right.
I don't know, track or hockey players. Swimmers. Whoa.
Right.
Why? What's going on? Oh,
I don't get it either. To be honest, I wish I had the answer for you. But I always say that to people about Ronda Rousey, about what a great, determined second generation judo athlete. And just, it almost brings me to tears that she had such hard times after that, because I knew her as a young kid, and I knew, like I said, we all knew she was going places, but still that wasn't enough. It was like watching Tiger Woods, at 10 or 11 years old. And then, he wins the Masters, but, there's no money. And he's living in his car or his parents' basement. It doesn't make sense, right, in our sport.
Do you think there's just too much variety here with, youth sports? There's so many different directions they can go. And instead of having 3 or 4, or a national sport to look to, they've just got so many different opportunities that it kind of spreads everybody a little too thin.
Yeah, that's a good point here. But if you look at it again globally, it's such a huge sport. They still teach it in schools, in the school system in Japan, and probably a lot of these Middle Eastern countries. It's such a huge thing because, again, it's very in Brazil, for instance, South America, Europe, even Russia. After Russia was such a huge powerhouse in the Olympics as one big country, then it broke down into 14 different countries. So now you're dealing with 14 great athletes. But again, they're probably rewarding their athletes better than we are here in the U.S. And it's troubling to me. And that's why I always try to get behind our athletes who are, setting up GoFundMe pages or asking for donations. And I think that's maybe the thing I do the most kind of behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And in some cases, they're really trying to get the word out. Hey, this guy's a great athlete. Try to get behind him. Try to give him $25 or something or whatever. Make a small donation. It makes a difference to a lot of these young people. And, to bring home a gold, we've never won a gold medal in judo and men's. We've won 2 in women's, of course. Kayla Harris is phenomenal athlete, some bronzes, a couple silvers over the years, but never a gold. But, it's such huge international appeal.
So you're talking about all the passion you have for it and the things you do behind the scenes, but there's a lot that you've done over the years in front of the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's coaching, right?
Yeah.
At every level. How did you get started in coaching?
I think, strangely enough, I've been teaching now for about 20 years. And after 9/11, a lot of these universities and colleges were encouraged to have some kind of self-defense or awareness program. And one of the colleges that took that very seriously was St. Xavier University by my old house in Chicago. And I guess my friend really got involved in it and asked me to join and wanted me to be a teacher, and we kind of put it together where there were 3 of us teaching, or kind of like 2 people on the mat helping, coaching, and me instructing. And ever since then, I just kind of took off with it. And I would do certain things, like in that situation, they wanted questionnaires filled out. Why are you taking this class? What are you afraid of? Does terrorism bother you? That kind of thing. And I think I even still have those because it was so interesting. Where do you feel the most threatened? You know, everyone puts down a parking garage, you know, but that's TV, you know, and it's so kind of interesting to talk to people about their fears and show them that they're capable of doing stuff. I had the chance to do that in the police department quite a bit. I was asked to speak at a couple of public events to show self-defense awareness, all based on judo, all off the top of my head pretty much. And, you know, there was a sexual assault pattern going on up in the north side by Wicker Park. And I spoke at one of the hospitals there, and people loved it so much they asked me to come back again. And again, this is no like formal, I'm reading out of a book kind of thing. This is showing people, empowering people to understand that if they're attacked or approached or grabbed, that they can respond in some kind of manner that's going to defeat that attack and allow them to get to a 911 or a safe shelter or that kind of thing. And it's interesting to me. I think a lot of people have never had that experience. And that's probably one question I would have for like you guys. Why isn't everybody taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Why isn't that school now that we have in Orland Park that is so great and impressive and in fact doubled in size under Thomas, right? But why don't we have 10 of those schools? Why isn't everybody attracted to this? Why do people think I'm never going to be a victim of something? You know, and I think that's an interesting mentality and one that I almost want to kind of study. But because, you know, I can teach so much to somebody. If I did a women's self-defense seminar based strictly on judo, we would have so much fun. And within a couple hours, I could teach people how to defend themselves at a basic level, of course. You know?
Right. And that's the $1 million question, right? That's something that I think most of the instructors are always thinking about. You know, how come one, why not everybody wants to do this, knowing how important this is. So why people quit, why people leave, why people stop doing this. I mean, it is $1 million question. I think there's several different theories about this, but I want to circle back to your teaching because, you know, I think Gary and I, we can speak about this more extensively. We had the opportunity to actually witness you teach hands-on, right? We know your personality outside of this formal circle here, but you know, I think what makes it very unique and very successful for you, particularly, is the very, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it casual. Gary, what would you wrap this around? It's very, very entertaining.
Entertaining is a word for it.
Entertaining is a word for it. Very entertaining style of teaching. And it's not that you're not teaching. Nobody's goofing off. Nobody's ever goofing off. But you got to have a book like this thick and of different jokes and stuff that you see. Some of them are just mind blowing. Like, where this guy got this from?
Somebody put too much into it. But you know what? I always subscribe to that theory. Like, you know, Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to give somebody bad news, you better make them laugh. Otherwise, they're going to kill you. You know, I always think that if I can make somebody laugh or make somebody think, you know, laugh at themselves, maybe, you know, that they're going to remember that moment a little bit better. You know, I didn't do something right, and the sensei really busted my balls about it, you know, in a joking, funny way. But I think that resonates with the student to say, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to practice it so much, he's never going to be able to call me out on that again.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about coaching. You know, I only have a limited time with people. Like I always say, you know, it's like you're on a tour bus of Hollywood. You know, here's Zsa Zsa Gabor's house, and over here's where Sinatra lived. And they rest up the tour, have a nice week, see you next Sunday. You know, but the truth of the matter is you've got to get out and you got to walk the streets. Yeah, and you got to learn what else is out there. You know what I mean? So I can instruct you and I can show you. Again, going back to the women's self-defense thing, I could do like a 3-hour seminar. You can walk away with 3 or 4 great throws. You practice a little bit. But I mean, you know, my standard is always changing. You know, how many times you got to do that throw to make it work, to make it effective, to make it happen, you know, to make it second nature. That's what we're looking for. But I can't do that for you. And that's the great challenge with coaching. But I want to put you in a frame of mind that I want you to want to do it. They used to say years ago, like in sales or in police work or whatever. I was a policeman for many years, 20 years. But, you want to be able to tell somebody to go to hell in such a way that they want to and will enjoy the trip. So you want to tell somebody, you need to do 5,000, 2,000 of these, but I want you to enjoy it the whole time. I want you to have fun with it. I want you to make a friend and say, hey, listen, you're about my size. You mind if I throw you 100 times? The person will kind of laugh, but you'll throw them 100 times. And now you're 100 closer to being at that limit that you set for yourself. Yeah. But I mean, that's a beautiful thing. That's a great thing about judo. It has such an outreach. I posted something recently too about a deaf student where people could sign. This sport involves a lot of disabled athletes, especially visually impaired people. So it has such a wide reach. Not only is everybody doing it, but handicapped or disabled type people, visually impaired people, deaf people. I mean, it just attracts so many great people. And I think that's one of the great things about this sport. You can meet people and have fun and talk to people that you'd never met. I went to a competition, a judo competition. I had a couple gis I ordered online. They were too big. So I went to a judo competition with a couple of our students recently in October, and I found the biggest, fattest guy in the room. I said, here, these 2 gis will fit you. He said, what do you want from them? I go, nothing. Here, have a nice day. But that kind of is a funny kind of thing. And the guy will be like, yeah, well, okay, great.
Yeah, but he's going to walk away with something special, and
right.
And he's going to go back.
I don't know who I am, but maybe 5 years from now, he'll be like, hey, I remember you. You gave me those gis. I won the nationals with their gi or whatever. And that's what I'm kind of always inspiring, is trying to focus people. I refer a lot of people to the Academy for Jiu-Jitsu. I send pretty much a lot of people your way. I don't know that they ever show up or whatever, but I'm always talking about it. Especially, like I have a girl now that I'm kind of talking to, working with a little bit, a friend of my daughter's who's been through some traumatic experience, right? And, but I know in her heart, she is a dedicated athlete. She'll get up in the morning and run 3 miles while the other kids are sleeping on a sleepover here. My daughter's 17. But this kid will get up and run, and then she'll go home and change and go to work. She's so driven and so dedicated, and she's had some unfortunate experiences. But eventually my goal is to say to her, hey, Jiu-Jitsu is your answer. Go out to Orland Park. Go have fun. This is a great academy, a great environment with a lot of similar, like-minded people. And that's really what I try to do now, is maybe a little bit of an outreach, for people who I think are deserving.
Nice. Thomas.
Yes.
He's talking about the academy. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up before it's too late, because I know I'll forget, is there was a certain person here who knows you fairly well. And I told him I was talking to you this weekend, and I said, do you have anything you want me to say to him? And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, yeah, tell him I'm not afraid of him. And that was that was your nephew. And
that's another guy.
And I said, you're not scared? And he said, nah, my mom will take care of him.
That's probably true. His mother was hitting me with wooden spoons before it was popular.
Shane is awesome.
Yeah, that's my nephew. And I think now in June, what is it? I think June was 3 years for him.
Yeah.
Of course, we were off for a while with COVID, but, he, again, a great example of somebody I just pointed in the right direction and said, hey, listen, I even told him, I go, you don't got to do it all your life, but you need to do it for a couple of years. You got to get this under your belt. And I don't understand why so many more kids aren't there. I mean, we have a great kids class there, right? RŌL Academy.
Yeah, for sure.
In Park, Illinois, for anybody listening, RŌLAcademy.com. But
that's better settle. Smooth injection.
I got to plug your own school.
Jim's known for being subtle.
Why isn't there 500 kids there? If I knowing what I know now, why isn't?
Let me spin this different direction. How come in Japan, judo has been adopted as a part of school education, as the only country in the world who does that. And I might be wrong on this, but if there are others, there are not many.
Yeah.
Why that mentality is so strong in Japan and nowhere else?
That does kind of play into the judo answer too, because Professor Kano, who developed judo in 1882, he was the director of education there, right? He was the prime minister of education, and he developed the sport of judo because he didn't want to lose the jiu-jitsu past that Japan had established. It goes back to like the samurai days. If a samurai was ever to become disarmed, he would be able to then fight empty-handed, which is Japanese jiu-jitsu. And he wanted to preserve that and kind of made his own sport of judo, and it really took off. And I really think that was cool. But another thing that he did is he put it into their educational program. But I think Japan is a culture that wants to preserve its past. And you look at our culture now, here in America, and we're tearing down statues, and we have people burning this and burning that, and everything's offensive. But I mean, I think every country has that, but you have to kind of, at a certain point, just recognize that we grew from it. And I think that Japan is really good about preserving that, and understanding that their past makes them stronger today. And it's even in their cuisine, it's in everything that they do. The way that, I remember we were talking about this at one time, they're very efficient, economical, space-driven people, because there's so many people living in Tokyo, everything's smaller, everything's compact. I remember I told you, Thomas, they had the dishwasher that's like a drawer, because they want to save space everywhere they can. They're such efficient people. And it's a silly example, but it just goes to show you their thinking. And they want to preserve, and I think they want to bring their kids up to be able to defend themselves in another case, because they've always recognized that they're a little smaller in stature than everybody else in the world. Chinese, Japanese, the Asian countries, typically the average height and weight is smaller for an adult male or an adult female than everywhere else. And I think they always use that to sell the art, if you will, and sell the idea of practice.
Do you think because of their work ethics and the situation, the culture unfolded in Asia in general, their judo culture, quote unquote, is much different than in Europe or US?
Yeah, I think they have a tireless work ethic. Like over there, it's not uncommon for these guys to work 18 hours. Dedicate themselves to the company, that kind of thing. Now that's shifted a little bit in the last couple of decades, right? Where they're now starting to value more family time, stuff like that. And, it's always been a place that I wanted to visit, Japan. But, there's so many interesting things that come out of there. I'm watching a cooking show. One of my big passions is grilling and cooking and all that. And I'm watching a cooking show now on Netflix, and they talk about the Japanese and how their culture is and all that. But I think that it's so interesting to me that judo was constant. And even still today, in order to become a police officer in Japan, you have to be a black belt in Aikido, judo, or karate. So
let me stop you there, because I found this extremely interesting. I was actually reading about this last week, as all these interesting proposals are unfolding here in our country for defunding police and doing all these limitations out that direction towards Japan and Asia in general. They are going in the opposite direction, always have been, right? It's like the police officer has to have a certain skill set in order for you to perform this job politically correctly. And I don't want to get political here, but it is such a different mentality set. This is a tool and you need to use it. Yet here we are saying, we are telling the people who protect us, no, you cannot use this to protect us. You can watch and enjoy the view. I don't get it, that part, but I'm curious what your vision is on that. What's your
what I always thought was, it's certain amount of power in knowing that you have these skills to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I was on the police department, I would always say, or at least say to myself, or say to people, I'm not scared of people. I'm not scared of it. And so therefore, it allowed me to treat people in a way that was non-threatening. And I think some of the situations that we've seen in the country over the last 10 years or so, maybe Minneapolis, I think it's an example of officers losing their temper, getting angry, and overreacting to the situation. Whereas if you kind of had some judo or jiu-jitsu, you could not be upset, scared, control your stature, maybe is a good word, but you could also control the situation, de-escalate the situation a lot quicker. And I think there's a certain amount of beauty to that. That's why I always encourage police officers, first responders to be involved in something like this, jiu-jitsu program, a judo program, or even just a basic exercise program. I don't care what you do. Maybe I'll lift weights, or maybe you're a runner, but you have to have some kind of physical ability, especially as we start to discuss the aging workforce. And this is kind of like in line with the new position I have. I'm a consultant now to municipalities who employ police officers, correctional officers, of course, and all throughout here in our surrounding area. And you start to notice that a lot of the injuries that come in are the correctional officers in the late 50s, early 60s, getting ready to retire, trying to escort an inmate, try to get an inmate up or whatever, and they got struck. And I think that even if you were in shape for many years, you were probably working past your prime. And I think that's something that has to be recognized. But in a lot of cases, these guys are just trying to finish out. They're trying to get the required amount of years in, that kind of thing, and they're taking a beating while trying to do it. And that's unfortunate. But I always feel like these tools that we provide to people are such great tools, especially for police officers.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the past a lot about confidence, right? It gives you confidence, and when you have that, you carry yourself in a different way. Yeah. You're self-assured, so that something that seems potentially dangerous, you can recognize as it's not yet, right? And I don't have to react yet. I don't have, and again, not to get political or anything, but you can, once you know the difference of when you do have to use physical force and when you don't. I think a lot of these horrible situations that we see on both sides or any side of the spectrum can be avoided. And
I fully agree with that. Not only that, I think it helps to have those interpersonal skills, like we talk about using comedy and stuff to people to remember. I use that as a police officer all the time. And I would de-escalate a situation by making light of it. But I would also be procedurally minded, like that situation in Atlanta where they went on for 40 minutes where the driver was sleeping at the Wendy's. They waited 40 minutes to handcuff him and do all the testing and all that. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is I would have handcuffed the guy right away, and I would have taken that whole scenario in a whole different direction. Yeah. Maybe I would have dropped him off at his house or had a friend come get him or a million different possibilities of what can be done, but it wouldn't have been that. And they're not going to end up in me shooting at him 40 minutes later. But I think that, how you handle those things based on your own experiences really help to provide a great outcome. At least it did in my case. I never had a problem like that. And I always worked in a bad area. I worked in the west side and south side my entire career.
That's because you're so personal.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them are still trying to figure out the jokes.
I will be for a long time, that's for sure.
Wait a minute, you were making them laugh while you were locking them up?
Yeah, that's key. or even better, I would wake them up while I was locking them up.
Oh, sure.
But again, you have to be kind of tactically minded. It's a lot easier to get a fleeing felon or somebody who's done a serious crime at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when they're sleeping versus 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We use those tools of de-escalation because the situation doesn't have a chance to heat up. An ideal situation, arrest warrant. Now, that's not always the case, of course.
Right. Yeah,
but
sure.
When you can use those, it just makes sense to. But getting back to the original thing, I just was never scared of anybody. I was scared of being shot at, of course. But it took me to a different place mentally. I wasn't afraid of getting hit or anything because I was always confident that I could put somebody down. And not only that, I realized early on that if you hurt somebody terribly and they're bleeding, you spend the next 8 hours sitting at the hospital and then processing that prisoner. So I never wanted to be like sitting at the hospital waiting for, it's just a long, terrible day. So I always felt like this was such a great thing for me that I already had, where I could take somebody down, not hurt them, pick them up. The only thing that was hurt was probably their pride, because they would say, how did you take me down so fast? Maybe they were shocked or lost their breath for a second, but that was it. And, I would always tell them ancient Chinese secret, and
it is.
Yeah, I'd take them in, lock them up, and that was a great thing. But that's why I always compliment and encourage police officers who come to our academy, come to our arts, anywhere in the country, because it's such a great tool. It really is.
And I think that's what most police officers say who engage in any type of martial arts, whether striking, jiu-jitsu, judo, whatever case might be. It's not necessarily the skill set. At least that's what I hear. Correct me if I'm wrong here, or give me, tell us what you think. But it's not necessarily the skill set of the fighting itself, but it's the mental state and the mental stimulation on knowing where the limits are, knowing what you can do, what you're capable of, what they are capable of, how to react, how to de-escalate, how to act in those situations. That's what makes you safer. It's not necessarily the fact of fighting.
That's the mindset. I think that's why the Japanese do it that way. They want you to have that level of, hey, and I bet you if you looked at the Japanese statistics of how many officers, really beat somebody down or been involved in a bad scenario or something that took a bad turn, there's going to be very few of them overall. Because I think, aside from the training, they have that level of accomplishment and that level of self-assurance. There's a great book, Angry White Pajamas, written by a British guy. And I think I mentioned it once before. Angry White Pajamas. It's maybe 20 years old, but for Japanese men and women who want to be police officers or ready to be hired and do not have a black belt, they will put you through an Aikido program, which is basically hell for, so let's say, I think it's 5 or 6 months, every day for 8 hours, living in a barracks and training martial arts every single day and not dropping out. So this journalist went through the course with the would-be police officers. When they graduate, then they'll be able to go to the academy or whatever. And his journey and the injuries and the sweat and the blood and the pain, it's such an interesting book, because everybody wants to quit, but nobody will quit. And, it really tells an interesting story of how these people's mindset really works and how dedicated and the shame of what it would mean to quit. So a very interesting perspective being a non-Asian guy that wrote that book. It always stuck with me how the, so many instances of culture to clash or whatever, but, to go through that must have been really difficult.
It sounds like even just the concept of quitting or giving up is very different in those countries than what we see often, in U.S. or even in Europe surrounding us.
And that brings up a whole other thing about training through injuries and knowing when you're hurt and when you have to relax and when you can push on. Even if you're running or whatever, like myself this week, getting back in shape and trying to hit the elliptical and all that and do the weightlifting, it takes a toll on the body. Yeah. Sitting on your butt for even 2 weeks, you will start to atrophy. Your legs, your back will atrophy. You'll gain weight. It'll make it that much harder to get back into shape. It doesn't take long for the body to regress and go backwards. Yeah. It's like if you ever lifted weights and then maybe a doctor said, I'll take a month off and your elbow will feel better. So you take a month off, you go back to the gym and try to bench press what you bench pressed a month ago. It's not going to happen. It's just even in 4 weeks. Now, the younger you are, the quicker it is to pick up that pace, to getting back to where you were. But as you start to get older, it takes longer and longer.
That's why that return right now, after 4 months of being off, and we are not injured.
We
are just simply told not to train, or we were not able to train.
Right.
Now return is so difficult for some.
Yes.
To overcome the new habits, new schedules, new priorities, and it seems like there's a million excuses not to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I could write a book about excuses that thick, and that's what I had to be accountable
send it to
myself.
Gary, please.
Right. They used to have a T-shirt.
You want me to add a couple chapters?
There used to be a T-shirt a guy used to wear to my gym years ago. My workout excuses, 100 workout excuses or something, and my dog ate my workout program. And the whole list. And it was so comical. My partner used to kid me all the time and say, "Hey, you ought to get a shirt like that." Because, when the body experiences that pain, it's so often that your mind is telling you, "Hey, sit down and take it easy." When actually you shouldn't. You should actually be picking it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, the way the mind kind of plays tricks on us. And for a lot of reasons, I recently saw a video or an article about a senior citizen, maybe he's 85, 87 years old, deadlifting 200 pounds or something. But I bet out of all the people in that age bracket category, he's the only one, or I think it was a woman, she's the only one not complaining about a sore back and stuff like that. If her back is sore, it's from working out. Right. But if you sit around every day like the old folks home or whatever, or a COVID quarantine, your back is going to be sore, your legs are going to ache. That's why it's so important for mental health and exercise, get these kids back in school, to get their academy going again, and get people back out, get outside,
I was recently, go ahead, Gary.
Well, I was just going to say, Jim's talking a lot about overcoming things. And I know we don't have a ton of time left, and we did want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you have overcome.
Yeah. And got a whole list of injuries,
but
we probably go to midnight.
The one that I think is, when you hear the story, is the most impressive, is your injury that you suffered, not through judo, but through jiu-jitsu. Kind of a freak thing. And if you could just run us through that story, because I think that this is super inspirational. It goes a lot, it speaks to what we've just talked about the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. And, I'll say that, you're right to include the fact that it was kind of like maybe 1 in a million kind of thing. And I never want to shine a bad light on any kind of contact sport, but we know as coaches, Gary, you've been there with kids. Thomas, you've been there. People will get hurt, and we try to prevent it as much as possible. You guys know that I always talk about, don't go 100%. Go a little bit less and kind of go with it, And
you talk about in classes quite a bit about this, right? The 70% factor.
Yeah.
Once you know you fall and you let go, don't resist.
Just go with it.
That leads into issues, right?
And then get back up, start over. And if you think you're so tough that you can counter that attack, then counter the attack the next time. Don't fight like it's the World Championships right now, because we don't want that injury. I mean, I was coaching class or teaching class maybe 8-10 years ago. And Thomas, the interesting thing about you and I that people don't realize is we've known each other and trained together for many, many years, and my training ceased kind of 2011-ish, but I had gotten hurt back in 2010 at the old school where we trained at during a private lesson. And I had a real tall partner. And we used to kind of like to go for it. I was kind of new. I'm kind of a masochist. So when I went to jiu-jitsu, I wanted a white belt. I wanted to start as a white belt, and I wanted to go through the whole thing. And maybe my skill level with judo ground play was, maybe I was at a blue belt level. I don't know. It's arguable, but I was never great on the ground. I always say that, but I always had some decent skills, right? So anyway, I was going with this guy who was kind of a taller guy with long legs, and he got me into like a armbar situation, and I was sitting up to roll out of it, and I was going to stack him and pull my arm out, like, through his legs, because he was going for like a triangle, and he hit me with his left foot to put on a triangle, but he did it in such a way that he was trying to bring my body down by striking me real hard in the back of the neck. And this is why they don't have punches to the back of the neck, like even in boxing. They call that a rabbit punch. It's illegal. The neck is such a vital area. But his heel hit me in the right spot and shut down the vertebral artery. For the next 3 weeks, I felt headachy, painful, miserable, groggy, kind of. And 3 weeks almost to the day, back in 2010, I woke up with 3 mini strokes. And my face was all off, like I had suffered a major stroke, but it ended up being 3 minor strokes. And no blockage, no nothing. It's just that the interior of that artery had shattered or broken, and the interior part came off and formed like a pocket in that artery, and the blood started filling up that pocket and blocked the flow to the brain. So instantly I had lost all feeling in the right side of my body. And, I spent about 4 days in the hospital. And there's nothing they could do for me. There's no anti-clotting drugs, no nothing. And they just put me through observation. Then I went through, and a lot of people don't know this, but I went through some physical therapy stuff that I was okay with. But I had to go, and I learned how to walk again pretty quick. And I could even do some judo and stuff, because I had done it so many times, it was muscle memory. But the one thing that suffered from me a lot was my speech. I had to go to a speech therapy many times because I have a tendency to talk real fast. And even back then I talked faster than I do now. But a lot of the words that would come out of my mouth were slurred. And it was painfully embarrassing and painfully frustrating. And, that's a very serious type injury. I had a friend of mine suffer a major stroke. And boy, I tell you, it's just the hardest thing to overcome. But fortunately, I never wanted to admit that jiu-jitsu did this to me. It's something I love. I don't think I could admit it for a long time. But, I was back on the mat rolling again after 28 days. Wow. After being let out of the hospital. But it was a whole new normal. I couldn't roll like I used to. I had some strength, but that quickly deteriorated. Like now, even 10 years later, I'm just starting to get some feeling like back in my fingertips of my right hand. And there's like one spot on my cheek, on my right side of my face, that I can feel hot. Because I can't feel hot and cold, and I can't feel wet and dry. So, this combined with all the other injuries, I went on to have my shoulder replaced. I broke my wrist, and I had to have 3 bones taken out of my wrist. I also had my right Achilles torn while I was rehabbing my wrist. So it was a tough couple of years, but I never let that hold me back. I even just, kind of returned to jiu-jitsu. Just because I missed it so much. I just want to be
Jim, let me ask you. Ask you, you mentioned yourself that, due to this event, you were put in this position where not only it was a life-threatening position, right? It was a situation that was not easy.
Yeah.
Why back when initially happened, go back? Why would you put yourself back in that position? Because the reason I'm asking this is there's many people who might find themselves maybe not for the injury, due to injury reasons, but there are other reasons why they don't want to go back. What drove you back to return?
Because that was my normal. Going to the gym, going to work out, going to roll, going to throw people. It was my normal. I wanted to be normal again so bad, and I knew that I was weaker, so I didn't want to go necessarily lift weights, because I figure my strength has now come back a little bit, but I'm still probably 75% weaker than I once was. Like at one time I would do seated, military press, like behind the neck military press for 315.
Yeah. Thomas, could you imagine going with him at full strength?
No. I don't want to go with him now.
Yeah. I don't want to make light of this whole situation, but Jim McGovern at 25% is pretty scary. I can only imagine 100%.
Well, like I said, I talked to a guy just recently. There was one of the guys that reached out to me about my next promotion in judo, which I don't know. I think I got to go to the temple in Japan and pray to the Buddhist god or something to get the fifth degree. But, one thing he said to me, he goes, I just could never compete against your strength. You were just so strong back then. And he was a big guy like me, and we had a lot of fun together. But I think, again, I knew that I was strong.
So let us a little bit inside your head. What was going on at that time when you can't do all these things?
Yeah.
This event happens, you kind of go backwards, life sucks clearly. You can't go back to normal, which you talk about. Now you lose your strength. You can't do a lot of things.
Right.
Obviously difficulties communicating.
Right.
I mean, and there's this embarrassment factor that you talk about. Right. What's going on in your head?
I took all that negative stuff and I put it off to the side and I wrote down a list and I said, these are the things I can do. I can still squat. I can still do this exercise. I can still do that. So I broke it up into different days and that's what I do even still today. And I pushed myself to even try to do some other things. Like recently I just did incline bench press. I did 150 pounds 100 times in 20 minutes. And back in the day, there would be a joke, right? But I'm doing it now like my life depends on it. You know what I mean? Because, for me, it's such a big thing for me to say, hey, I can still do it. I'm not only a fighter in the gym or at competition or as a coach, I am deep down in my core. I just can't give up. And I think that maybe in some cases, like I'm too foolish to give up, or I'm too stubborn to give up is a better word, and I want to be normal again. I want to, and even still today, I think about this thing every single day. And the one thing that gets me, I told Gary about this, this was written up in a Jiu-Jitsu magazine because it is a rare event. I want to make that very clear. If you're considering Jiu-Jitsu, this is a very rare event, but I think maybe only the one other person that was an MMA fighter ever had this kind of thing happen to him that I was aware of at that time. But it was written up in the Grappling International magazine or something years ago. And the professor at that time, he would be in the habit of searching his name on Google to see if anybody had mentioned his name. So sure enough, his name was in the article. And when he searched, it came up. And he called me up to voice his displeasure with the fact that I had shined some light on this injury to make other people aware, and to get a free subscription to the magazine and the t-shirt, which they stiffed me on. But, I wanted people to be aware. Hey, you're in a sport where you could get injured. I mean, it's like that. We accept that, right? Football, soccer, same thing. But, he was mad and upset. But I was like, hey, this is my journey. I got hurt. Your school, sure. Right. But you don't have to live with the fact you can't feel half your body and you can't talk properly and your face is distorted, and I thought that was an incredibly selfish thing for him to say to me after so much I had done for him. And but I think that people have a right to know, and if I can prevent maybe one other guy from being in this situation, it's worth it.
What struck me the most, Gary, what hit me here as I'm listening to this story, that when Jim talks about, I wrote these things down that I cannot do. The next thing I was expecting to say, these are the things that I skipped and I continue focusing on something else. And he went the opposite direction. He said, I can't do these things. So I was doing them even more. I was pushing. These were my goals. Yeah. This is not my excuse. This is my goal to continue pushing because I want to get back to normal. And that normal was getting back on the mat. This is mind-blowing, Jim. I mean, I've known you for 30 years? No, 20
a while.
20, about that. I don't know. A while, right?
Yeah, 17 years, maybe. But the thing is, these are the challenges I'm faced with. Even tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, I'll be faced with these challenges. Because I will be exercising and working with that list in my mind of what I can and can't do. and I'm always pushing that threshold and always trying to up the weight a little bit and always trying to up the intensity a little bit, and, it's a struggle. I struggle with, I tore my Achilles tendon and I was rehabbing a wrist injury and I was pushing a weight sled and, a normal amount of weight for me, which might be a lot for a lot of people, but I remember I was pushing 800 pounds. And as soon as I started pushing,
wait a minute.
No, I'm not kidding. I did 600, 700.
This might not be a normal weight for most, but it's normal weight for me, 800 pounds.
Yeah, I was doing 800 pounds for like the length of the gym on a weight sled. And the minute I pushed 800, now 600, no problem. 700, no problem. 800, damn. My Achilles went, and that was May 5th of 14. And I was in a cast until October. Oh. I mean, my Achilles went and rolled up into my calf. And, again, I'm rehabbing a wrist injury. So now I'm limping into the hospital. I can't even use a crutch because I can't put the weight on my wrist and my shoulders.
Oh, we froze up here. There, you see coming back?
Oh, we lost him.
We did lose him. Well, let's find out. Here's the thing. If we did lose him.
I couldn't even use a crutch.
There he is. Jim, we lost you for a second.
Oh,
last two sentences. Come back.
So you left off at you.
You got me now?
You couldn't use a crutch, right?
I couldn't use a crutch.
So pick it up.
It was almost a comical situation. Me getting into the hospital and me struggling for 6 months in a cast where I couldn't use a crutch. And I broke the cast about 3 times. They finally put me in a walking cast, a boot cast, and it was just a comedy of errors. But in the meantime, I was depressed. I was angry. I was mad at everybody. And where did I take that out? I'm eating. And I ate and ate and ate. And I was so mad. And then I could finally walk and I'd be like, oh my God, what did I do to myself? So I'm still fighting to get that weight off, even after 6 years. But, I have a renewed energy. The fight is still on and the journey still goes, I'll be there tomorrow morning and working out and, with a smile on my face. And, it's almost funny in your own mind. You want somebody to challenge you. Like, you're a big guy. Why aren't you lifting more weight? That's only 150 pounds. What do you what's wrong with you? And I could, in my own mind, I was just like, I'll challenge anybody. They go through what I've been through. They go through the list of injuries, and then do this. But, so many other athletes have been like this. I remember I watched that Ironman triathlon in Hawaii, and the one guy had gotten very hurt or something. They were interviewing him, and he said, I want to go do the Ironman. And he's laying in the hospital bed. He can't walk. And he said the first thing he did was like low crawl on his elbows and chest to the other side of the room and then back to the bed. And then, like, every day he tried to be a little bit better and go a little further. And finally, he's running in Hawaii and doing the Ironman in Hawaii. And I thought to myself, God, that journey outshadows mine. Like mine's a joke compared to what this guy had. He couldn't even walk, dude. And now he's doing an Ironman. So it's, in my mind, it's not so unusual, this journey. Because I've identified with so many other athletes who have struggled through adversity and pushed themselves beyond that limit of what our mind tells us. Hey, just sit down, take it easy. And that's, I'm starting a blog about it too, because I want to bring awareness of my journey and my adversity to other people. And I'm hoping to get that launched pretty soon. But, it's an interesting story. It's not the story I wanted. But, go back to that meme that we've all seen, jiu-jitsu changed my life. And it sure did. It's not what I wanted. I wanted to be a black belt. The guy that hit me in the head, he's a black belt today. I wanted that journey. I wanted to be a black belt. I wanted to compete at the Pan Am Games. I wanted to go to the World Championships, and it never happened, never will happen.
Well, you can still get that black belt though. Once get
I don't know. My skill level is so down. But one thing that I really strive for, and one thing I'm really thankful for, is the academy and the atmosphere that you guys created there for me and for the other students. And I tell them what a great place that is to train all the time. And I feel like I'm building my knowledge base more than my skill set at this point. because I'll be 55 in a couple months. And I just feel so strongly about the mental benefit of being in that room and training and, putting that gi on and saying hi to people I'd never met. In one case, Thomas had Eric and I worked with a brand new student, and it was his first jiu-jitsu class ever. And Eric and I were just having so much fun with him and each other. And, because I would tell Eric, listen, you only go 25%. He goes, how much are you going to go? I go like 110. But my 110 is probably like your 25% because he's a black belt.
That's coming from the guy who pushes 800 pounds.
Right. That pushes
right. But and Eric called me out on that. He goes, your 25% is not really like 25%. I go, shut up, Eric. You know what I mean? So this is, and then again, he'll laugh at that. And the new guy will look at us like we're both lost, but we have such fun with it that, it's a beautiful thing. We're training in a great facility, great instructors, great people. You can walk up to anybody there and say, hey, how's it going? Hi, how are you? And you're going to get a conversation. It's great. It's a great environment.
Jim, if you had to pinpoint one single event throughout your entire 40 years being on the mat that was the best event or best moment on the mat, where would you know? What's up, Gary?
I was just going to say it's when he started training me in judo, right? Yeah. I can answer that for you.
Wow.
No doubt.
Wow.
And we're
this
live.
Episode just derailed.
Yeah, right.
It's okay.
I don't know, man. I don't know that there was a great event, but there was a real turning point event. I remember training my butt off for the senior nationals back in 2002, maybe. And I think we were in Vegas, and we were at the Riviera Hotel, and I was in probably the best shape of my life and really felt great about my judo. I had won a lot that year. And I remember Aaron Cohen, who won the event in his weight class that year, was coming over to coach me. Now that's that's super impressive. That's like Peyton Manning showing up to your kid's quarterback class, and guiding. So he's watching me and he's coaching me. He's just on the coach's chair, and the other competitor is looking at me like, oh, it just got real in here, And I went out, and I mean, this might have been the quarterfinals. And I really had done well that day. But I've had such a long history of being a 50-50 competitor, which means, or my record might be 50-50. I'm either going to win great or I'm going to lose terribly. And I went out in this match, and I was like, I got this guy, and Aaron screaming. And let's say even probably Ronda Rousey was there. And, everyone was watching this match because people like to watch the big guys fight, right? So I got out there, and this guy, he pwned me in probably record time. And I was so angry and hurt and embarrassed. And, the worst thing is, you prepare for so long, and those kind of things should not happen. But when they do happen, you just sit there and think to yourself, wow, and I think I heard somebody say that, as an athlete, you always remember the losses, not the wins. And it haunts us. And I can remember sitting on that mat, and this guy's raising his hands up. And now by this time, Aaron Cohen has walked away. He's already in the hot dog line. Ordering, give me 2 dogs, a Diet Coke. And what kind of chips you guys have? And
this guy's not getting any. I don't even know him.
Oh, man. I'm sitting on the mat going, where did everyone go? Did I win? And it was over, man. And I knew at that moment, man, the kid that drew me, he was really serious. He went on to do great things. But, wow, that is such a memorable thing. And I live with that. It tortures me, but it also inspires me. I was in great shape. There's no reason it should have happened. But here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Jim, at the end of each episode, we do this cool thing. I don't think we told you about this, but we have 5 questions, and we would like you to answer them honestly. And actually, the first thing that really comes to your mind, some of them are tricky. And,
okay.
We might or might not make fun of you while you answer them, but that kind of
That's honesty.
Yeah.
You
I'm just setting the playing field right there.
Sure.
Gary hit it.
Yeah, so just in very brief descriptions, which I know might be a little difficult, but what was it like that first time you ever stepped on the mat? And since you're such, it's judo for you, not necessarily jiu-jitsu, I'd like to hear about that first time you stepped on the mat for judo.
I think every time that I went on the mat, I was scared. When I was in the Army back in '85, I went to airborne school. And I remember one of the instructors saying to us, if you're not scared every time you jump out of a plane, stop jumping out of a plane. And he goes, I've had 700 jumps. He goes, I'm scared every time. Right. But you have to recognize that fear and you have to turn that into a positive energy. And that, I think, is one of my strong points in coaching. I'm able to do that. I'm able to overcome that. And it was not easy to do. Because I had no idea what to do. And I figured it out after so many years, so many competitions, so many 100 times of being on the mat. I figured out what works. And that's really what I want students that I teach today to tap into. It's not so much how to throw, but it's how to manage that anxiety, that stress, and how to compete and how to win. And that's really what I strive for coaching.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. You might have just touched on this a couple minutes ago, and it doesn't have to be martial arts related, most rewarding achievement. Again, coaching,
teaching Gary.
it's coaching me.
That is such a big part of my life, teaching Gary. Eventually hoping that he learns the very first movement.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
I know it's a challenge. It's really made me want to go back and reconsider. But I think probably my greatest achievement was in my career. I'm a safety professional, but there's a test that you can take, a series of tests that you take, and then finally you can become a certified safety professional. And it was so god darn hard to pass this test. And the one leading up to it, I passed no problem, the associate, and then I took the certified one, and I had to take it 3 times. But I hired, what I did? I hired a master's student as a tutor, and not just once a week, every day for 40 days. We sat down, rain or shine, bears were playing. I didn't care. We were going 2 to 5 hours every single day at $20 an hour. And she was an Indian girl from India, and she was getting a double master's in something I couldn't even say. I think one had to do with statistics, and some had to do with finite math. I have no idea, but I hadn't done math since 1981. I knew it was a weak spot, or I thought it was a weak spot. But the funny thing is, when I started doing it, I realized I couldn't do it. So I basically taught myself, or she taught me, trigonometry, geometry, algebra, and calculus, all at the expense of this passing this test, just enough to pass. And I retained that information and was able to do it.
Nice. Beautiful. Describe what it felt like when you got your black belt.
I got my first black belt in '92 and my second black belt a few years later in judo. And every time was, a celebration, of course, through an achievement. But in judo, in true fashion, I always tell people, now that you're a black belt, now we recognize you as an official student. Now your journey begins. All that training, the brown, the green, the yellow, the white, that's just getting you ready to become a student. Once you put that black belt on and you walk onto a mat, whether you're at a seminar or a conference or a competition, people know what you've been through. People know what you are, and people know that you're on your journey, whatever that is. And that to me is, an accomplishment, but yet a beginning.
Beautiful. All right. I don't think it has the same superstition in judo as it does in jiu-jitsu, but do you wash your belt?
I just never wash my belt because I feel it doesn't tie well. I hate for my belt to come off.
This is the first practical reason.
There's a practical reason behind it.
Yeah. In jiu-jitsu, it's cool to like take your belt off and throw it off to the side, and some lower belt grabs it for you and folds it and hands it to you. You know what I mean? But in judo, I want that belt to stay where it is, God damn. And in competition, they want you to keep that belt. So they'll tell you, the referee will make a motion, fix your gi, tie your belt, and you can't take an extended amount of time or you'll be penalized.
Okay.
So really, that is practical for competition, as in training, as in competition, because you don't want to be in a situation where you get penalized just for tying your belt. So I want that belt to stay where it is, damn, and I want people to know I'm a black belt.
Beautiful. All right. Fantastic. Thomas?
Jim, thank you for sharing this story. Let's wrap this up. What amazing, I think, journey from very beginning between jiu-jitsu, judo, obstacles, hills and valleys. Huge inspiration to me personally from a judo perspective. Thank you for everything you do for the community. And I know there is so much more to come. And I'm really hoping that you can teach Gary something.
I'll learn.
I know. It is a challenge.
It is. I tell you, the saddest thing is that the one time I had just a beautiful, beautiful throw. Unfortunately, Sensei wasn't there, so it's like it never even happened.
Jim, what did they say? If
it never really happened.
It never happened, right?
Yeah, if a tree falls out
first. I just want to say real quick, I enjoy our judo program.
Hold on 1 second. We're losing you again. Let's get that connection back because I think that it's going to be something nice here. All right.
Try it again.
Try it again, Jim. Oh, we lost him completely.
Oh,
there he goes.
There we go.
All right.
The show is over. That's a sign to wrap it up.
It is. That we were going to get like the most wonderful nugget of just beautiful inspiration. And we lost him. He's texting me right now. I tell you what, let's wrap it up. We'll have Jim on again and we'll get that statement from him.
To be continued.
All right, Professor, I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.
That both of you just pounded out.
I know.
Be a waste
Good morning,
of time.
Thomas. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm great.
Professor?
I'm great. Ask Gary what T-shirt he's wearing.
What are you wearing,
and
Gary?
then tell him to wipe his nose. Okay.
What are you wearing and wipe your nose? What is it? Judo? Oh, yeah. What a classic T-shirt. I really have a lot more respect for you now.
Yeah.
I'm going
to start from zero.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a stripe on your green belt. How about
Thanks.
that? Yeah.
Wow. Cool. I'll be the only judoka with a stripe on their belt.
Yeah, pretty much in the world.
Yep.
You can tell everyone how you earned it, though.
Yeah, I know, by kissing ass.
Yeah,
So I think I told you when we talked the other day, I'll cut like a real intro.
Yeah.
So Thomas will just give a clap so he knows when to sync up the audio and the video for YouTube.
Okay.
And then he'll say, and every time he says, and we are live, that seems to be his thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how that started, but I kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
It sounds good. I listened to the one that you guys did last week with that MMA girl.
Oh, with Fiona.
Fiona,
yeah. She's a good kid, and she's gonna let.
She started at 3 years old, huh?
Yeah.
I hate to one up her, but I started in the womb. I don't know if you want to roll that into the story anywhere, but I hate to be outdone. You know that about me.
Yeah.
I started in the womb and pretty much came out and threw the Dr. Oshoto into the wall.
Nice.
After what he said to me, though, was insulting.
What did he say?
He said I did everything I could, but he lived. My mother started laughing. It wasn't funny. I had to throw him. Go anyone else want to get some?
Hey. Yeah, no respect. Is that a Jim McGovern original, or did you grab it from?
No, absolutely none of mine are original. I watched a lot of comedy. I watch a lot of comedy.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just watching Ralphie May, and I wondered why I like him so much, you know? And he died a couple of years ago, you know?
Hold on a second. Thomas, are you recording?
We should start this.
Just start recording, please. Please, hold on. We're not starting the show yet, but I definitely want Thomas to be recording. So
Okay.
It's going. It's going.
All right, good.
So at any rate, I watch a lot of Ralphie May, and I really like him lately. And I've been watching a lot of him on YouTube, you know? And I couldn't quite put my finger on why I liked him so much. And then I looked up his Wikipedia, you know, and he was born on the same day as me.
Oh, geez.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And a couple of years apart, just like Michael Jordan and so many other talented individuals born on that day. But I really seem to have this connection with Aquarius people, February birthdays. Like, you know, as an example, like you and I, Gary, have nothing at all. I don't even really like you. And I would assume, if my theory is correct, that you would have nothing to do with a winter birthday. You were probably born in the summer.
Unfortunately, and I know you're full of baloney right now because, yes, we know we're both in February.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, no.
And I also know if you didn't like me, you wouldn't care this much to make fun, to go out of your way to make fun of me so much.
I know. That's unfortunately true as well. So at any rate, you guys got to listen to him. He's doing, he did a great one on gay weddings and why you should always go to a gay wedding. And I was rolling on the floor. No pun intended. But I mean, it was just that funny. You guys got to look that up on YouTube. I'm not kidding you. It's hilarious.
All right. Are we going to start this like professional?
I don't.
Or are we just going to do this?
I don't even know if we want to.
I think we just leave it like this and just we'll figure it out. I'll edit in some sort of intro and then we'll be ready.
You can introduce me. You know, I mean, it would take 10, 15 minutes on my accolades and titles and, you know, diplomas and whatnot.
All right, hold on. I need to sync things up. Okay, hold on a second.
Think away, boys. Think away.
I feel like I should leave.
No, stick around.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And we're live.
And we live.
Yes, we are.
You guys want to get on the podcast?